From the Annual Association for the Study of Giftedness and High Abilities, we would like to welcome you to this second series of international conferences, Positive Synergies on High Abilities and Giftedness in Times of Crisis. This year, the topic is consequences of non-identification. Now it's my honor to introduce Anne Beneventi and her talk, titled To Cultivate Human Connection and Emotional Well-Being in Gifted Kids Through Empathy. She's got a master in GQA for assessment of gifted people. She's the successor of Anne-Marie Roper and is an associated professor in the Center of Development of Gifted Kids and has received the award Lifetime Achievement and of supporting emotional needs of the gifted in 2017 for promoting the understanding of the essence of giftedness. Currently, she is the specialist in gifted kids for the Tessellation School. We hope you enjoy her talk. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Anne Beneventi, and I'm a gifted specialist living in California. I wish I could be with you in person. We received such a warm welcome from the Annual Association when Linda Silverman and I visited Asturias. Thank you to Lolly, who invited us to return to your conference to honor your dear gifted children. It's difficult to speak in front of a screen when I would much rather look into your charming faces. I'm the successor of Anne-Marie Roper, who ran the Roper School with her husband George for over 50 years. Anne-Marie and George were Nazi survivors and worked to educate children to be emotionally intact so as not to succumb to a dictatorship, as humans often do when there's fear. Anne-Marie spoke about and taught Educating Children for Life. It's actually the title of one of her books. I think now is more important than ever to educate children for life. And a way to do it is to cultivate compassion and self-compassion in our children. But it's not enough. They need some specific skills to build relationships and resilience as well. Skills such as self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy, which we'll discuss further. I started a school for gifted children during the pandemic called Tessellations. We've been remote this first year, but we're launching on a beautiful campus in the fall, if it's safe to do so. We also have a nature campus, and we'll have the privilege of getting kids into the woods, a great break from screens. It's been a challenging year, but also rewarding to be part of a community with children at the center of our common goal. I've been giving much thought to how to support the well-being of children and adults coming out of the pandemic, and it's been a time of uncertainty. The lack of the elements that have previously helped us to thrive, like the ability to deeply engage with others, is not fully possible right now. And there's anxiety from the enormous uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, stress builds. Many families are also experiencing grief from loss of a loved one, or just grieving the loss of normalcy. We need to develop some coping skills in ourselves and our kids. And several months of a global pandemic push us to think about our priorities in education and parenting that will enable gifted children to thrive when uncertainty is our only constant. I want to share with you some of my thoughts about rekindling the passion and social connection in our kids. I'm part of a child-centered collective, and the gifted leadership team is defining what it means to be child-centered in our approach to parenting and educating gifted children. A hallmark of child-centeredness is for children to be appreciated for who they are rather than just for their accomplishments or good grades. The research of Dr. Emmy Warner and others who studied children who overcame adversity discovered some protective factors that helped them to thrive. First, they had at least one adult in their life, a parent, a teacher, a relative, or friend, who was a caring champion who refused to give up on the child. I recently evaluated a child who felt alone in the world except for his grandmother. He wasn't able to be with her for 6 months because of the pandemic, and it was very difficult for him. But just knowing that grandmother was there, though, seeing her on Zoom or even speaking to her on the phone, was his lifeline. She didn't tell him to get grit or pay attention or stop being lazy or criticize him for his grades. She is the person who loves him, not for his accomplishments or grades, but for who he is. She believes in him. Having someone in your life like that can make all the difference between well-being and desperation. I hope that you will be the champion. Can you imagine creating a miraculous difference in a child's life? I want to be that advocate for the children at my school. I want to give them permission to be themselves, to feel all of their emotions without judgment. But I also want to teach them how to understand their feelings and appropriately express their emotions and to understand the message behind their emotions. Because being a champion or having a champion isn't enough. Children still need other skills to build resilience. So beyond having an ally in their life, the kids in the research who were thriving in the face of adversity had a skill set. Resilience is made up of skills that are actually teachable. These skills or practices correlated with peak performance in the classroom and with the reduction of mental health issues. 3 of these strengths are self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy. Self-awareness is understanding who we are, knowing our strengths and accepting our weaknesses, and understanding our feelings. The second skill, self-regulation or self-control, is the ability to put the brakes on in order to think straight, and the ability to create space between feelings or impulses and our response. And the third strength is empathy. Empathy, it includes perspective taking, the ability to imagine the experience of another person. We need to teach children the skills of human relationships so they can form and sustain friendships, which is crucial for lifelong happiness. Skills such as active listening, the ability to read body language and facial expressions. Children and adult literature is an excellent tool to teach perspective taking. I tell parents, if you're reading fiction with your child or watching a movie together, stop and ask your child, how is that character feeling? How would you feel if you were in that situation? It helps develop perspective taking and empathy. Self-awareness is also getting in touch with the inner or the self of the child. Anna Marie Roper developed a method of determining giftedness by looking at the emotional characteristics known to correlate with advanced intellectual functioning as an alternative to IQ testing. I use this method, gifted qualitative assessment, to evaluate prospective students at my school. In this process of assessment, we first try to see who the child is. Anna Marie called this who the self of the child. This is the inner, non-physical part of a person, our essence, really. Anna-Marie described human consciousness as having two sides. There's the inner and outer experience. In gifted qualitative assessment, we're trying to detect the inner experience or the authenticity of the child, because that's the healthy, intact part of a person, the part that defines who a person really is. Anna-Marie described it as the eye of the beholder, because it's the eye looking out onto the external world. Our external world consists of our material world, all of our physical world, along with our thoughts and our feelings. The external world is always changing, always in flux, but the self, or the inner part, stays consistent. The external experiences compete for our attention. We live in a world of constant distractions, causing us to lose sight of our inner experience. So we want to teach inner focus. So yeah, the goal is to teach kids to focus inward. That's why mindfulness practices are so effective. When kids have access to their self, they're connected to their guidance system, a guidance system that is unique for each individual. So I also try to look for their passions. When I evaluate children, I'm just going to share my screen here. I ask parents to fill out the Gifted Development Center forms to give me some background information before meeting with the child. One of the most valuable answers I get is to the question, what motivates your child? Parents' answers give me clues into their child's giftedness and also their aptitude. If a parent's answer is, my child is motivated by winning or rewards, or my child lives to please others, it can mean that the child is externally motivated. And I want to explore this further because maybe they're disconnected from who they really are. But I usually get deeper answers, because if gifted children are intact, they're usually internally motivated. So more typical answers are such things as, my child is motivated to go one layer deeper. He's motivated to discuss complex questions about the universe. Or maybe they'll give me a creative answer, because creative endeavors sometimes motivate kids. Maybe they're motivated by pretend play or inventing characters and then making books about them. It's common, though, for gifted children to also be motivated by a drive to understand the inner world. For instance, that's reflected in such answers as, my daughter is motivated by anything that extends her current understanding. Or, he likes mastering something new and challenging. Or, my child is motivated by intense curiosity and joy of exploration. But sometimes gifted kids are just motivated by fairness and justice. My favorite recent parent response to this question was, my son is motivated by something deep within himself to which no one has access. I took this one as a challenge, because in gifted qualitative assessment, we try to get a glimpse of the self that's the source of the internal motivation and reflects the essence of a child. So we pay attention to what's motivating them. Modern society has a narrow conception of ability as defined by IQ or school achievement. Human ability, though, is diverse and multifaceted. Some things gifted kids are good at are discouraged, disparaged, or marginalized. And the consequence is that they can feel that they're not good at anything, and then the world loses their talent because it doesn't have a chance to actualize. We need a bigger conception of aptitude. Finding your passion is an intriguing process. Passions include things you love to do, things that fulfill you, things that are rewarding, and things that resonate with your spirit and lifts a person up. It's astonishing how many children feel disengaged in their own lives because they're responding to expectations of others only. But everyone's entitled to discover things that give their life meaning and fulfillment. Another skill that helps in self-awareness is naming emotions, understanding and expressing our emotions. Psychologists find that one of the best strategies for self-awareness is naming your emotions, because learning to name your emotions with more and more nuance helps children understand the precise emotion that they're feeling, and then they can understand the message behind it. We sometimes use emotions or help them understand what they're feeling by using metaphor. For instance, comparing their moods to the weather. It creates some space between the person and their feelings so they can more easily access the emotion and name what's going on. For instance, I'm feeling stormy, or I'm feeling sunny with a few clouds. It's especially effective with gifted children because their abstract reasoning ability enables them to think in metaphor. We also teach children that all emotions are good because they let us know how we're doing and they let us know if we're connected to ourselves. It's like watching the gas gauge in your car. One role of the adult is to mirror what's being experienced in the child. But it's really important to first acknowledge what kids are feeling. Oh, you must have felt really disappointed, before offering solutions or suggestions. So our job as adults is not to limit children's emotions, just teaching them how to express difficult emotions. So how do we teach children to manage anger, disappointment, anxiety, which could signal stress related to uncertainty, and cultivate optimism? Optimism is a skill that can be cultivated by taking control of our thoughts. And this brings me to self-regulation. It helps to identify stress signs in yourself and the kids before there's a feeling of being out of control. Because when you're angry or overloaded, your thinking is distorted. I notice right before I get onto a Zoom call, I'm kind of grinding my teeth. And I've learned that this is my body's signal that I need to breathe. So I breathe. Parents and teachers can assist children to use their cognitive ability to regulate their emotions, but it can't be done in the heat of the emotions. So help them notice and track stress signs. Is it before a timed test? Is it after school when you're tired? It's also important to help identify somewhere they can go to calm down, either at home or in classrooms. and ask your kids what they need to calm down. This is very individual. Some kids need music. Some kids need quiet. Some kids need books. Reading can be very relaxing for so many gifted kids. Children who are resilient often have hobbies that can help them to decompress. But monitor what you watch. Monitor what your children watch. Live videos can increase stress and decrease empathy. So watch the funny stuff. The more they are, though, of their stress signs, the better they are at self-regulation. I've noticed in my work that if kids can't regulate their own emotions, they have difficulty regulating how others feel. It's like all their focus goes into trying to self-regulate, that they have nothing left over to consider the other person. This also happens with sensory processing issues. Their senses become so overloaded that it causes them to lack perspective taking or empathy. So people think a child is missing a social skill, but really it's a sensory processing issue. Another aspect of self-regulation is having control over your attention. I'm seeing more and more inattention, and it has to be related to the uptick in screen time. There's a saying in cognitive science: what information consumes is attention, meaning where there's a wealth of information, there's a poverty of attention. Well, this is the information age, and we're inundated with the flow of information. And with that comes inattention. Learning online due to the pandemic seems to be making problems of focus worse. I'm noticing more distractions now, and kids are feeling more isolated than ever before, so they're using technology more. Today's children are spending more time than any time in human history staring at a screen, and they have fewer face-to-face interactions. And I'm seeing tech addiction. Daniel Goleman's book on emotional intelligence was really an argument for teaching kids social emotional skills in school, because even 20 years ago, he was worried about technology and felt that kids were not getting enough face-to-face time with each other to naturally develop social skills. You learn social emotional skills from life and from interactions. Because kids don't have adequate face-to-face connection, we need to explicitly give them social and emotional skills. Daniel Goleman defines social emotional skills as self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy. The same exact skills that Dr. Warner and others found led to thriving in the face of adversity. I recently evaluated an 8-year-old boy over Zoom. He wasn't able to focus with me for even 5 minutes without looking something up, tuning into a video game, or otherwise trying to multitask during our conversation. Now, granted, the conversation was on Zoom, which is difficult, but it was just too compelling for him to get the dopamine hit from the internet. Video games and other things on the internet are designed for high dopamine response, instant gratification. I said to him, I'd like to see if you can handle focusing in this discussion for 5 minutes. We made a bet, and he was unable to do it. He was unable to have a conversation with me for 5 minutes and stay focused. His parents reported that he's experiencing low-grade discontent. Everything seems boring. They said he's become irritable, aggressive, and not interested in the activities that he used to enjoy. All signs of screen addiction. The school that I started, Tessellations, is in Silicon Valley, so I'm sure my tech concerns are amplified. But technology is the way of the future, and it's here, full speed ahead. So we need to be aware of the problems and find antidotes for the way technology is changing our children's brains and the difficulty they're having focusing. We definitely need to set limits. I've discussed with my colleagues that when school is back in person in the fall, we need to be diligent and have strong tech rules. We need to be gentle, compassionate with kids, and give them plenty of opportunities for face-to-face relating. So mindfulness, based on the research, is the best tool to enhance our attentional abilities. Mindfulness is defined as paying attention on purpose without judgment. It's a practice, and the ability strengthens with practice. 10 minutes a day of mindfulness has been found to reduce the debilitating effects of multitasking on our concentration. Mindfulness is the muscle that builds focus. There's 2 simple tools I found to connect us internally through mindfulness: focusing on our breath and focusing on our senses. These practices get us out of autopilot or reacting to our external world and into self-awareness. When we use our breath or our senses to bring back a wandering mind, it's like bringing back a wild horse. It's that action of bringing our mind back that builds the muscle. Our mind isn't wired to focus. It's wired to wander. And a wandering mind is also an unhappy mind because it wanders to the things that are bothering us. Our brains magnify risk or negative aspects that are interpreted as threat. It's actually a survival strategy. So I've been compiling ways to use mindfulness to build self-awareness, self-regulation, and empathy in our kids. But in the process, I realized I was leaving out an important element: self-compassion. In all my thoughts, hopes, and practices around promoting compassion in children, I overlooked self-compassion. True self-compassion seems extremely rare, but so important, and the research is so compelling. I want to use the remainder of my time to speak about it. So compassion is defined as the desire to alleviate suffering. Self-compassion is the desire to alleviate our own suffering. I've been looking at the research, and there are more than 3,000 studies showing the amazing benefits of self-compassion in well-being and success in life. Dr. Kristen Neff is one of the researchers and co-founder of the Center for Mindfulness Self-Compassion, where they discovered that people who practice self-compassion rather than being self-critical are also kinder and more loving to others. It's important to learn how we talk to ourselves. How you speak to yourself is habitual, and it's those habitual habits that are the hardest to break. But why does being self-critical feel so normal? When it came to preparing this presentation, I was so consumed with working on my school that I couldn't find the time or clarity to develop my presentation, and I was being very hard on myself. I was feeling a lot of self-judgment, and I was actively saying unkind things to myself, which led to feelings of shame. I know shame is unhealthy because it shuts down our awareness and we cut ourselves off from other people. It takes energy and it takes away our energy and motivation and our motivation to do better next time. It's not a motivating mindset. It's very debilitating. When gifted children with their high perfectionism make a mistake or fail at something, they can actually go into a threat response. We feel threatened, and then the natural response is fight, flight, to go away or isolate ourselves, or freeze. And this is when we get stuck or ruminate. We think, what is supposed to be happening is perfection, and I'm the only one who's struggling. It's a fallacy of the mind because being human is about being flawed, and that's how we learn. When we make a mistake, we fight ourselves. We don't think logically about what went wrong or what happened. We just think that if we beat ourselves up, we won't make the mistake again. And we'll change our behavior by being harsh with ourselves. This is very counterproductive, though. Being self-critical doesn't make us safe. It inhibits our ability to make productive changes. We want our children to develop an ally inside of their head, telling them they can do it. And if they fail, telling them that's okay. We don't feel so bad if a friend makes a mistake. We can be caring and supportive, more supportive than we are to ourselves. We already know how to be kind. We just need to learn to be kind to ourselves. And treating ourselves the same way that we would treat a good friend. These skills we already have inside of us. All we really need to do is practice speaking to ourselves like we would speak to a good friend. It's more about giving ourselves permission to do it and then remembering to do it. Sometimes parents are very critical to their children. The research has taught us is if you're warm and encouraging to children, they'll be more motivated to try again. They'll have more grit and they'll be more determined. So when a child makes a mistake, there's 3 different responses. We can try to boost their self-esteem by telling them, don't worry about it, you're smart, you'll figure it out. Or we can get very critical or angry. But the third alternative is to model self-compassion and let the child know that everyone makes mistakes. It's part of life and it's how we get better. This caring, supportive stance gives our kids the inner resource they need to be motivated and try again, and it builds self-worth. Parents who are critical think that being critical is being helpful to their child. People actually believe that if you're kind to your child, it'll be harmful. But if you are too critical, that does harm children. A parenting child that is too harsh or accepting of everything is negative for development. There's a healthy parenting style that's neither too harsh nor too complacent or permissive. It's one with healthy boundaries and rules, and there's also unconditional love and acceptance. So there's a difference between self-esteem and self-worth. Self-esteem is thinking positively about yourself. It's not a problem to have high self-esteem, but the problem is how you get it. There's a lot of unhealthy ways to get self-esteem. You can feel special or better than other people, which leads to constant social comparison. It can also lead to bullying. We know, we know that's why kids bully. They're trying to boost their self-esteem. They're trying to feel good about themselves in comparison to others. The biggest problem with self-esteem is that it's contingent on success, however you define it. We feel self-esteem when people like us, when we feel like we're attractive or successful or athletic or whatever's important to us. But what happens when we fail? When we fail, self-esteem deserts us. It's contingent on success as opposed to failure, which is a problem because as human beings, we are constantly going to fail. Self-compassion is the perfect alternative because self-compassion isn't dependent on success or failure. Self-compassion is simply a process of being kind, supportive, and warm to yourself, and remembering that failure is part of the human condition. It's just saying, hey, part of being human is being imperfect. I'm going to be kind to myself in the midst of struggle. Self-compassion kicks in precisely when self-esteem deserts us, when we fail or make a mistake. And it's not like positive thinking. We aren't telling ourselves lies. We're not saying, oh, I'm great, I'm great. No, it's just the opposite. We're opening to the truth of our imperfection. Yes, I'm imperfect, but I can accept that. And this is where mindfulness comes in again. It gives us the ability to turn toward what is, especially when things are painful. When we're present with ourselves and aware of whatever we're experiencing and recognizing it as part of the human experience, we develop interconnectedness rather than isolation. We remember that we're not alone and that everyone makes mistakes. It's like saying, life is difficult for everyone. The ability to not feel alone is one of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion. When we remember that we're never alone, we don't suffer at the same degree as if we're isolated. If we're in denial and we just try to avoid the pain and not acknowledge it, we can't be self-compassionate. We need to be present to the moment. Parents also have feelings that they think they're not supposed to have. They get disappointed in their children. But who says parenting was ever supposed to be easy or perfect? Every single parent struggles with their children. That's what it means to be a parent. With mindfulness, you can let yourself have all the feelings and still be kind and supportive to yourself. Instead of feeling isolated, you realize all parents struggle with their children. The capacity to feel bonded in this way has actually helped our species survive. Self-criticism taps into the threat defense system. Self-compassion taps into the mammalian care system. When we feel connected to others, we release oxytocin and we feel safe. When we feel threatened, we automatically go into flight, fight, or freeze. We're actually switching our sense of safety from the defense system to the care system with self-compassion. It can be difficult though, and there are a lot of cultural influences that kick in. Gender roles tell men that they can be fierce but not sensitive. Men's ability to feel tender self-compassion is inhibited because they think it's weak. For women, it's the exact opposite. We're allowed to be soft and loving, but we aren't allowed to be angry or claim our power or stand up for ourselves, all which are actions of self-compassion. Women are actually less self-compassionate than men because women are taught that they shouldn't meet their own needs. They should always meet other people's needs, and our own needs don't count. Women are actually more compassionate to others than men are, but slightly less self-compassionate. When you're compassionate to yourself, your compassion to others go up, but in a more balanced way so you don't get burned out. We need to stand up to these restrictive gender roles and help kids ask themselves, what do I need to be healthy and happy? What do I need to take care of myself? Do I really need to look at social media right now? Or maybe I should just sleep. Instead of going down the critical pathway, go down the compassionate pathway and embrace the fact that there are pain and failures along the way. So to conclude, I don't think anything I said to you today is new or earth-shattering, but it's just a reminder to see kids and value them for who they are, and to help them discover their passions, and to get in touch with their emotions and learn how to manage their responses and their attention. Mostly, I hope we'll develop self-compassion in ourselves and in our children. The gifted can be hard on themselves and they expect perfection. Practicing self-compassion will help them feel connected rather than isolated. This is where I feel our focus needs to be as we, kids, parents, teachers together, creep out of our pandemic lives and back into our authentic face-to-face lives. So to close, in my assessment, I also ask parents the question, what are your hopes for your child? So in conclusion, I would like to share some of these responses. Well, one response, it's kind of long, but I think it's really worth sharing. So what are your hopes for your child? My son experiences awe and wonder in ways that are unique and extend beyond the bounds of his age and sometimes societal norms. We believe that his passionate drive toward learning means, We believe that his passionate drive toward learning means that he may have a unique capacity to contribute to the world. Since the ability to think and feel deeply also lends itself to vulnerability, he needs a community that fosters trust, care, and safety. Our hope is that tessellations would provide an intellectual and emotional framework that would help him and other highly gifted children to come to terms with their strengths and differences. The development of these lifelong skills would help carry them through school, careers, and relationships. Our hope is that he would have a depth and breadth of learning at tessellations that would connect him to his purpose, with teachers compassionately leading their students to forge new pathways beyond their limits through programs that give opportunities for joy, risk-taking, social-emotional learning, and collaborative sense-making. That's my hope too. Thank you.